again from Skillablers desk and getting you a wonderful, beautiful session, industrial track on manufacturing today. I have with me wonderful panelists. I also have a wonderful moderator with me. Let me take an honor and privilege of introducing our moderator for today's afternoon. We have with us Mr. Dhirendra Kulkarni. He's Pre-Sales Senior Director, PTC Technology Solutions, an engineer by profession. He's done his engineering degree in electrical electronics stream to his credit. He is Senior Director Managing to the technical teams at PTC India. He has overall experience of 25 years, which includes industry technology implementation at large manufacturing organizations and consulting. As a part of his role and responsibility at PTC, he has helped and helps the manufacturing industry in their digital transformation journey, supporting them with the technology solutions in the area of engineering and manufacturing. Welcome, Mr. Dhirendra Kulkarni. A very good afternoon. I also have with me wonderful panelists from industry professionals. I have with me Mr. Ramesh Balakrishna, Continuous Improvement Leader, Sourcing G Aviation. Good morning and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
I also have institution professional Vikas Sir. He is the Chairman and Managing Director, Design Tech Systems and Private Limited. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. At Youth Professional, I have Mr. Binu Gopinath, Partner Excel Group. Good afternoon, sir, and a very warm welcome.
Good afternoon. Very warm welcome to all.
Thank you. From the youth student side, I have with me Mr. Afnan, graduate student, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Dubai. Welcome, Afnan.
Thank you so much.
All over to you, Mr. Dhirendra Kulkarni. Looking forward to a wonderful session.
Thank you very much, Deepika. Thank you for the wonderful introduction to all of us. And by this time, the youth, especially who's attending this session, must have realized the plenty of experience that this panel has. And I'm sure everybody is going to get benefited out of some of the views coming from these experts from the industry. So before I really start taking the views of the manufacturing industry from our eminent panelists, I just want to give kind of a idea to our young professional and youth, an idea on where India really stands today from manufacturing perspective. I think they would be really happy to hear from me today on this, and that will also give them where the future is going. So today, if you consider top 10 manufacturing countries in the world, India stands number 6th. Okay, we are the largest tractor and two-wheeler manufacturer in the world. We are 5th largest truck manufacturer in the world. We are 6th largest car manufacturer in the world. And probably the way the factories are setting up here in India, and very soon, I think we will move in the top 2 or 3 in car manufacturing, in the coming years. Currently, just to give an idea to the youth, where the manufacturing stands in terms of the overall GDP of India. So manufacturing contributes around 16% to the current GDP growth of India. And with aggressive plans that government has for the future, the goal is to really make it 25% contribution from manufacturing to the overall GDP. Now, if we have to really improve from 16% to 25% in the next 5 years, the lot of government initiatives have to come in place. You must have already heard about some of the very important initiatives like Make in India, which is promoting and encouraging the manufacturing in India, and also the recent initiative from our Prime Minister, Atmanirbhar, which basically to get benefit out of the standoff that we have in China today and the pandemic that it has created. A lot of global OEMs are now looking towards India to give them that supply chain manufacturing components and things like that. That will also improve or probably encourage to improve the manufacturing here in India. And our MSME, which stands for micro, small and medium enterprise segment, which contributes which gives an opportunity to 100+ million jobs here in India, will also grow in coming future with Make in India and this Atmanirbhar. So with this, a brief inputs, you all realize that today we stand in a quite good position with all of these the statuses, and we will hear from our eminent panelists and how the future of manufacturing look like, what it means to the youth, especially. That is what for the next 40-45 minutes we are going to discuss. So let me start the session with taking the views for our first eminent panelist, Mr. Ramesh Chandra, all the way from US. Mr. Ramesh, first of all, a very good morning. It's a very early morning, in fact, to you, and thank you very much for that. Yeah. So I would like to know, and especially I think you are the right person to give us this view because you look at from outside perspective. How do you see the Indian manufacturing today and where it is going?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Dhirendra, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. We have a pretty well distinguished panel here. So I don't profess to be an expert on the state of the Indian manufacturing industry as such. So I'll start with the caveat, though, is that I'm here on strictly in a personal capacity, as a supply chain expert. Much of my experience revolves around supply chain all the way from upstream through the downstream side of business. And so I'd not kind of represent GE, or its views. So having said that and having gotten that out of the way, although I don't have much of experience working in India as such, I've been observing developments for sure. And so what I try to do here is kind of juxtapose my experience working in the manufacturing sector in the US with what I've observed in India, and try to illustrate some of the the good, the bad, the ugly about the Indian manufacturing industry. And then hopefully we could, look at the future. In fact, that's for the audience here. I think that's more important than where we've been and, all the history around Indian manufacturing as such. So firstly, the bad and the ugly. So if you look at India, the Indian manufacturing industry in particular, it's been kind of a story of missed opportunities, misplaced priorities. In a sense, we've seen pockets of excellence, though, in auto manufacturing. We've got world-class facilities in generic pharmaceuticals manufacturing. So you have some good happening there, but that's not all pervasive. You don't see that across the board, replicated across all industries. And some of it has to do with the fact that a lot of manufacturing was based on the idea of labor arbitrage as such, trying to capitalize on cheap labor. And that's not, in my opinion, going to be a sustainable strategy going forward. So anyway, Dhirendra mentioned about the Indian, manufacturing contribution as a percentage of GDP, which has been fairly flat for a while. So while GDP itself has grown anything between, kind of 5.2% to about 8.5% over the last decade, ignoring 2020 as such, manufacturing's contribution has been pretty static over that period. And so that's kind of a concern, but as a moderator mentioned, there are concerted efforts to improve that. And so that's going to be a big thing. One of the big issues, though, that you see with the Indian manufacturing industry is about return on invested capital, non-performing assets. And so you really think about it, over 50% of manufacturing companies don't even return their cost of capital as such. So that is a serious concern. It points to some real systemic flaws, which need to be corrected, obviously. But in terms of what are those serious bottlenecks or constraints or pain points that hinder progress on the manufacturing sector, in my opinion, it's all kind of pretty obvious to anyone living there, and especially for folks who look at India from the outside. It's things like infrastructure in terms of product market access, in terms of ownership, in terms of labor, land market, the approvals process, not having a transparent and consistent enough regulatory framework. And you could add things like local corruption to some degree, but it is imperative that these pain points be kind of addressed it, in some measure to see progress. So what's the good that's happening though? Because that's what we need to be focusing on here. We can't ignore these issues, but at the same time, I'd rather paint a more optimistic picture here. We've got strong tailwinds, as Dhirendra mentioned. You see a trend where global manufacturers are trying to diversify their risks. They're looking for alternatives, the alternative to their existing supply chains, to their existing manufacturing bases. You read a lot about economic friction with China, for instance, companies thinking of moving out of China. There's a lot of wishful thinking there happening as well, but the trends there, and it predates China as well. So there is also, and you guys know that more than I do, a concerted push by the government itself through initiatives like Make in India, that's geared to raising that share of manufacturing's contribution from the 16% to the 25% or so, which would be a huge game changer. Depending on who you ask, it could result in a net increase of anything between 60 million to 100 million. So that the number's up for grabs, but no matter how you slice and dice it, it is going to be a huge game changer from a jobs creation standpoint. There's been real improvement in the investment climate as well, as evidenced by FDI inflows, which have been fairly stable and growing as well. And so a lot of that is channeled towards manufacturing, or manufacturing in some way, shape or form would indirectly benefit from some of these FDI inflows as well. But I think the biggest tailwind, in my opinion, besides all of these factors happening, is that is the youth of India. So youth by the end of 2020 is projected to be around, I may be a little off on the numbers here, be about 34% of the Indian population, which I think would be its biggest asset, the biggest driver of its growth. And how we channel that would pretty much determine the state of Indian manufacturing in particular, and Indian industry, and Indian growth in Indian economy as well. So I think that's kind of the biggest trump card that India has.
Yeah, thanks, Ramesh. I think that was a good views, and especially on the positive side, you spoke about some of the points I made is, the alternative source that you talked about, which India, that's an opportunity for us in manufacturing. The improved or increased FDI flow into India, that will set up more things. So that's an increased opportunity again here in manufacturing. And of course, the biggest strength ours is youth. You said 35%, I think it's much more. And yeah, absolutely. It's how we direct them, what kind of opportunities we give them. It really, shapes up the future of India. Absolutely. Very good points. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So let me move on to Mr. Vikasji from institution perspective. Like, how do you see the manufacturing going forward here in India? And from an institution perspective, what is your thing or an advice or an views on the manufacturing? Is there any gap, or like how it needs to be filled, or what kind of opportunities exist there?
Yeah, thank you, Dhiren. And as Mr. Ramesh and you mentioned that India has definite demographic advantage, that in terms of manpower, but also there is an opportunity. But if you want to encash that, this manpower has to be trained properly, the way the industry wants. And now that is where the challenge comes in. Whether we look at ITIs or polytechnics or degree colleges, there is a very big gap what the multinational companies are looking for and what kind of trained manpower is available. But we have been working design tech to bridge this gap. And just to give you an example, when we set up certain centers of excellence in Andhra Pradesh, and Kia Motors saw those facilities. They were convinced that this kind of training can get ready trained manpower. And one of the reasons why Kia decided to set up plant in Andhra Pradesh in Visakhapatnam because of this trained manpower. So if industry requirement is mapped with what institutions are training, then definitely there is a very big benefit and a very big dividend that students and the country can enjoy. Government, on their part, has formed a very elaborate skill development activity, National Skill Development Council. Whatever funding requirements are there to create skilled manpower and employable manpower, government is willing to fund, and that is creating some amount of trained manpower, bridging the gap at the lower level, at the vocational level. What we are looking at, if similar initiatives can be done at the graduate and postgraduate levels, that will be much more beneficial. So latest trends of technologies are coming, and government is willing. What we are also finding that lot of leading private colleges and leading institutions like IITs, NITs, Manipal, they are making investments, but that is covering tip of the iceberg. If that can come at a more broader base and even middle level institutions, that will benefit a lot. And as Mr. Ramesh says, there is an opportunity. FDI is coming, and if we get geared up with a trained manpower, then there is no stopping of our initiative of increasing our GDP from 16% to 25%, because there will be skilled manpower and there will be jobs available to them.
Yeah, thank you, Vikas. I think some of the very important point you made is about the skill development initiative from the government, and of course I was aware of what Design Tech is doing, but you very nicely explained the institution, how it is really helping to take this government initiative forward. And very important points you made about establishing the center of excellences, the training centers in different the geographical institutions. And if these multinationals actually look at those facilities, and if our students, youth professionals get trained in that, I think they will be ready for the industry, and industry get the better trained people. So it will help us to improve our quality of the product and probably improve our manufacturing efficiency. So I will come back to you, because on what exactly technologies and trainings you provide in the center of excellences and how you can really avail that. I'll come back to you on that once I go to the our other panelists and come back to you on this.
Yeah, sure, Dhirendra. Sure.
Thank you. So let me turn mic to Mr. Binu from Youth Professional. So Binu, you have been, just wanted to get your views on, the manufacturing, how it is shaping up, what are the opportunities from youth perspective, because youths we classify as people who have just graduated and got into an industry and started working, and what kind of, what is their experience, and if you can share with youth so that they can be better prepared if there is any gap, or if they need to learn before they really go there.
Thanks a lot, Dhirendra. I think Mr. Ramesh and Mr. Vikas covered a lot of points.
Yeah.
So I would start in a different angle. I would rather I'm a self-made entrepreneur. Okay, after my education, I got into vocational training. So that was, I felt, to be an edge point of me having hands-on experience, and getting into the industry with a hands-on experience. I worked in abroad to get the passion to do something in India, started my own business. So when I came to India, I realized that I had learned something on the CNC technology, which when I came to India, how I decided to start a business in India, when I came to India for an holiday, I came to know that there's hardly any exposure of this particular field much, not there's any training classes happening, manpower is not getting trained with this technology. So that's how I thought that I have an opportunity here to expose myself to the global market, to bring some business where we can do something with critical exposures I had. So what I see over the period of time of employing a lot of employees in the manufacturing sector where you have to have hands-on experience, I see that the youth is not very clear on the passion, what they want to do. So I think they get into the traditional methodology of, getting into engineering because of the ranking, getting into some field, getting into engineering, not knowing whether that's their passion or not, end up in an industry confused, really not knowing where they're heading up to. I think that's one of the major reasons why we don't see a youth moving in a direction where we can take the country towards a direction. So first thing is you have a self-direction. So a collective self-directions can move the country to a direction. So if you look at manufacturing, a lot of things happening, unlike my times, no institution giving trainings on this new technologies. I see a lot of trainings happening with the new technologies coming, institutions working. I would rather see the institutions working towards more of an occasional direction, where you have a lot of hands-on experience. Once the training is over, they are out in the market, start performing with the hands-on experience, which is what I feel is lagging, because I see a lot of graduates coming in with good marks. I know that they have good marks, but I see that the marks is not because of passion. It's because of just getting the marks on. So when the passion is lagging, I don't see the output. So this is what is the direction which has been what I've been seeing. So we've been trying to do a lot of things in this country. I've been working, I left abroad, came here to do something for this country. As a business, we've been successfully handling projects in abroad, which is very tough projects, working on things like this. I don't have a trained manpower. It becomes my job to take a manpower, train them into all this. So you lose a lot of time in it. So the pace at which we can progress basically is a slow pace. Technologically, I think that's one of the reasons why we are lagging behind. We are not adapting the new technologies because we don't have the type of manpower readily available to involve into new technology. So we still continue with our old fashioned or old outdated moving forward. So I think the all other aspects have been spoken by Mr. Ramesh, because I thought I would put a little highlight on the youth perspective and how that can help in manufacturing and bring the country up in manufacturing.
Yeah, thanks, Guido. I think some of the important points you made is really the gap that exists today, which people like you, when you get into entrepreneurship, you need to train. Probably you lose that particular time. And so I think that is where what Mr. Vikas told comes into picture about setting up the center of excellences, training center, skill development, and what are those kind of skills that needs to be developed with this, so that nobody will be 100% ready when they reach industry, because they need to learn on the job. But almost reaching there, maybe 70-80% ready always helps, because, and especially you spoke about some latest technologies we are not adopting, and whether we bring that as a part of the skill development and should train them, train the youth in that, and then take it to the industry. We will come back to you, because I'd like to hear again more from Mr. Ramesh on the new technologies that what you are talking. Which are those technologies, and whether that will be part of the skill development to train the youth. I think that is something which is interesting, which is we are going to discuss. But before I go back to Mr. Ramesh, I would like to hear views from Afnan, because I think that would be very interesting. Which is different completely from a student perspective, who is just graduated, just getting into industry with lots of dream. And so I just want to hear from Mr. Afnan that how this change of from academics to the industry, and what do you see in manufacturing when you just go into the go from the academy?
To be fair, like when we're doing our educations, like I said, I just finished up my bachelor's in engineering. We get a sort of outlook on how the industries within the engineering world work. Obviously, manufacturing is a very big, crucial part of that because, I mean, every industry in the world needs a manufacturing system right now because to the laptops we use, to the pens we use, they go through the manufacturing process. So it's a very unavoidable industry. I have been like given my take into the manufacturing industry on different paths, and I feel like from a youth perspective, it is more important to be well versed with that industry because as people say, the youth of today set out the future for tomorrow. So to be able to do that, we need to know whatever systems we have existing, how to improve them, how to work on them, because every few years, or not even few years now, world works very fast now. We keep improving on every present day traditions, and even in the manufacturing industries. First you had labor work, now you have robots, literally machines were to make. So the manufacturing industry is a very developing industry. So it is pretty interesting from a youth perspective to be put into that industry because from my perspective, this is the start of our, work set part, that phase of our life, because we're done with our education. So this is the best time for us because this is where we learn best, where we evolve best, because we are still new to this. You guys all have years of experience, so you have seen different systems come in play for the manufacturing, but we are learning here now. We are still raw with the information and what we can input as a youth. I believe from my perspective, one thing I'd like to point out is in education, like during our engineering studies or bachelor's, how much we are given a chance to understand the industry is also very important because it's very plausible that sometimes the student could have a wrong image, or not wrong per se, but a different image of a certain industry, and there I feel it's crucial for the youth to come in because you can't just jump into something without understanding it clearly, and I've seen this upfront. A lot of people sometimes assume the manufacturing industry is just putting parts together. No, 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 no. It is a lot more complicated. I think, like Mr. Ramesh said, he has well experience in the beginning to the end of the systems, how it works. I think he would agree with me that there is a lot more aspects to these kind of things than just putting 2-3 pieces together. From a youth perspective, I feel like manufacturing is a very crucial part of our future, which will always exist. Like I said, manufacturing is key to all industries in the world right now. Everything and anything needs a manufacturing process, a well-versed, well-set up manufacturing process. But again, nothing is perfect, nothing is best, everything keeps evolving. So I think a key crucial part of that is when the youth who have our new fresh ideas take help with the people from the industry such as yourselves who are more experienced to help us better understand how we are doing the right or wrong thing, and I believe that is the main perspective from the youth point. For the manufacturing industry per se, is I believe most of us we feel like we can improve the process. But at the same time, I think we need to understand that it takes time also to improve. It is known that youth nowadays is very impatient. We want everything done as fast as possible. But I think it's crucial to understand that some other processes which are already there have been there for quite a good time and they are working very well, no doubt. But obviously, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I think those are very interesting and some different perspective of now to understand more from your perspective about manufacturing before you really jump in there. Yeah, we will come back to you again. Maybe I'll go back to Ramesh and a couple of questions here. Maybe I would request you to give a quick view on these things because since we want to cover as much as possible in the limited time. So, Mr. Ramesh, next question to you is really how do you see, like, what are the technologies that we just spoke about, how youth should get trained in the technologies, what skill set they should be ready and all of that. So I just wanted to know your views on what are those technologies that is impacting the future of manufacturing or will be there for the next decade or so, and especially with Industry 4.0 coming in. So what should youth learn or should look at some of those technologies which will help them to understand manufacturing better and be part of this manufacturing revolution that is going to happen in the future?
Sure. Yeah, I'll attempt to keep this as brief as I can.
Yeah.
And you've opened up this whole new, area with by mentioning Industry 4.0, because that is arguably the elephant in the room right now. There's a lot of conversation about it. and you're seeing brief glimpses of what it could look like. And I think since these are early days, you really don't. We're still trying to get a sense of how that revolution would pan out as such. So, so I believe the more I learn about Industry 4.0 or cognitive manufacturing, as they call it, it is going to be disruptive no matter how you look at it. And it would revolutionize manufacturing in multitude of ways. So if you look at the convergence of, and for the uninitiated in a sense, look at essentially the convergence of IT or the digital world as we know it, and OT, operational technologies, or the physical world as you know it, which is at the core of Industry 4.0, it is bound to open up a whole range of opportunities, career opportunities as such. And like I said, we barely scratched the surface. So what we're seeing here is kind of a convergence of disruptive technologies, like a perfect storm in a sense of something that takes Industry 4.0 out of the realm of science fiction and something, to make this transformation possible. You've got technologies like AI, you've got big data, you've got, the emergence of cloud, you've got blockchain, industrial IoT, advanced analytics with machine learning. We mentioned AI already. Human-machine interaction, mobile, wearable technologies, augmented reality. That's going to be a huge thing as well. Or as they call it, cognitive HMI, and also the digital to physical conversion piece of it. Advanced robotics. Some of these foundational blocks have already been set in 3.0, and we're still living through that. But 4.0 would essentially build upon it. And I think it would provide a tremendous advantage to manufacturing in terms of ensuring, process efficiency, improved safety, productivity, quality. And as a supply chain professional, I'm really excited about it. I can't wait to learn more because I think this would enhance and provide a whole new layer, level of transparency across the supply chain, which would be a huge game changer, because that's been one of those traditional areas of inefficiency from a supply chain standpoint, is not really having end-to-end visibility of the supply chain. And I think from an Indian context and from a global context as well, Industry 4.0 is not something to be afraid, really. This is not likely, at least over the foreseeable future, likely to take away jobs from classical or traditional manufacturing in any big way as such. And this change, unlike previous industrial revolutions, is not about building bigger, meaner machines, or even about building more sophisticated machines or serious machine upgrades, as much as it is about optimizing and leveraging what we call the digital thread. So that is kind of making better use of information, eliminating inefficiencies, especially in the interfaces between equipment and the operators, for instance, or facilities, sites, businesses. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry to just interrupt, because I just want to get one more view quickly from you today on this Industry 4.0 you mentioned, and various, all those technologies are the latest technologies, I think, part of the Industry 4.0, basically, the augmented reality, the industrial IoT, the artificial intelligence, the blockchain, the cloud computing, all of them. So what kind of opportunity it provides to the youth, actually? So should they look for these kind of technologies so that, and one very important thing you mentioned is it's not going to take away the jobs, but it is going to create an opportunities for the youth in these areas.
Exactly.
So just maybe a quick maybe 30 seconds view on what kind of opportunities opens up for the youth.
Well, absolutely. You could think of a whole range of possibilities already, and we barely scratched the surface in terms of what these opportunities could be. And my message to the youth, though, would be to rather get fixated on a technology and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be a specialist in AI or in a certain area. That is important, to have, a certain depth of understanding of what this means. But from a career choice standpoint, I would ask them to focus on building capabilities, especially capabilities that would enable the convergence of the digital and the physical world, those capabilities. So we've talked about all of those, but I think they need to think a little broader and build on their foundation as such, build their general skills and capabilities that would be valued in a future manufacturing scenario, as opposed to just focusing on a capability as. And again, the other thing is, it's not just about 4.0, we're still in the midst of 3.0. And so there's enough of opportunity, automation and robotics and stuff that still provide real viable career alternatives. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, stay away from anything that is driven by labor arbitrage and focus instead on building real skills. And also, build skills that enable you to pivot. Ultimately, and this might be a question for later that you might ask, but it is about the fact that today, and already we are in that scenario where every youth needs to think of themselves as a business of one. So everyone essentially needs to think of themselves as being an entrepreneur. And from that standpoint, it's those old days of getting super specialized in a certain area may not hold true going forward. So they need to keep a fairly broad, open mind from a career standpoint.
Okay, thanks. I think very important point you mentioned about building the skill levels, which compromises all of these technologies, together. And also, not everything is lost still in robotics and automation, and because that is the foundation for Industry 4.0. Still, opportunity exists there. I think it's going to be more and more smart, more and more, we call in fact smart manufacturing. So all the skill sets around that is only going to, help them to make even India stronger in manufacturing in terms of efficiency and quality, so that we can be globally competitive and become an alternate manufacturing source.
Right. The one thing I want to point out is, I wouldn't take a lot here, is think of the analogy of the cell phone versus fixed landlines. The way India leapfrogged over the lack of having fixed landlines and straight away went into the cellular era, is how we need to think of this in a sense. Although it's not exactly a like-for-like comparison, where over here in the manufacturing world, like you mentioned, Dhirendra, that 3.0 is a prerequisite. You need to have a certain minimum level of automation to take advantage of 4.0. But nevertheless, I think we need to think in terms of jumping ahead. This is kind of once in a generation kind of an event happening, and I think everything needs to align to take advantage of that set of conditions to take that leap forward in a sense, and get straight into 4.0 as such.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, before I go to the Afnan, just to really check on this, because just wanted your view, because Ramesh talked about still the opportunities in 3.0 with robotics, automation, and then getting into all that latest technology trends in 4.0, which is really huge opportunities in front of the youth. But what are we doing to really train youth in these technologies and make them? And Binu also talked about how we can make youth a little bit ready in all these things, so that they can directly employed, or they can be more efficient as they when they start working. So these skill development or center of excellences, or like what kind of trainings or what kind of technologies are taught in this center of excellences, or any kind of programs enabled to really train youth to understand this 3.0 plus 4.0 and open up an opportunity for them in front of them?
Absolutely. Like Mr. Ramesh mentioned, that there is a digital world and there is a physical world.
Yeah.
We call it also, in terms of our jargon, digital twin. Okay, product, a complete digital twin. But how the digital world and physical world gets correlated, how it actually works, and how our digital work can finally be put into actual physical designing and physical manufacturing. This is very unclear for the students. IoT, they, they augmented and all kinds of technologies. So what we do, there are two problems in the our conventional training colleges. One, they don't have infrastructure. Second, they also don't have trained faculty and handle all these technologies and train the students. So in our concept of excellence, we combine both and physical world. On one hand, we have all CAD, CAM, CAE, IoT, robotics, all these technologies. On the other hand, we have actual CNC machines, actual robots, actual work being done on engineering as well as vocational level. And to enable students to learn this, what we also do is we provide trained faculties. Our faculty run all these centers years. And third year, they side by side run this center with faculties of the institute. So we do handholding and enable all these training skills are passed on to the faculty. We also have created certain automated training programs which are computer based, which faculty can run. So at the end of 3 years, when we hand over the training center, they have the latest of on software side, latest on physical side, and they also have trained manpower to train them. That's whole concept of center of excellence. And the results are so good. We started with state. Today we run almost 100 such centers of excellence at polytechnic and graduate level all over India. And we train more than 1 lakh students per year at various levels. And our experience has been once students are trained and certified, it helps them get a job if they are looking for a job, or it helps them in their higher studies because they are very, very good to go abroad and carry out their studies. So both ways, it is very helpful.
Okay.
We provide IoT, AR, PLM, CAD, CAM, CAE, robotics, automation, electromechanics, all kinds of technologies in these centers.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Vikas. I think, yeah, we got an idea that how you are bridging this particular gap from design tech perspective. You are trying to create the center of excellences, train the faculties, and you mentioned about 1 lakh students getting trained in all of these technologies, what Mr. Ramesh also spoke about. I think that will really, and of course, you also spoke about the career, the employment opportunities, also these training facilities that can generate. I think that's really good. Maybe as we go forward, or probably as a part of the outcome of this session, if we can provide more details on how students can avail these, or youth can avail this, getting registered into these center of excellences or training centers to learn this. So probably that will help the youth to understand and maybe explore opportunities of learning these into these institutions.
Sure.
Yeah, so maybe I will directly jump to Afnan. I would like to hear from his views from the student perspective. Afnan, you heard from Mr. Ramesh about the, the technologies that impacting the future of manufacturing, the industry 4.0 changing the way the manufacturing is done and the kind of opportunities that it will open up. And you heard from Mr. Vikas about the, from an institution perspective, they are doing their bit to really bridge this gap and, teach the students or train the students, faculties, in these technologies, which will empower them more and probably provide a better opportunities. So what do you think? Is this all enough, or is too less, or what additional things you think needs to be done from youth perspective to really make them ready to embrace this future of manufacturing?
But first, I'd like to say I really appreciate Mr. Vikas when he said some institutions do not train them in the more relevant ways, which I completely agree with him 100%. Is a lot of the programmings we study, the software, such as like he mentioned, CAD, CAM, etc. To be fair, some of those are a bit predated now. Not completely, but we have evolved to a lot more softwares which work like a lot better and a more industrial level. You know, and I have seen this issue in institutions where they still prefer to teach the softwares which the few faculties specialized in during their time, you know, which they had done, and now they're teaching us the same software. But at the same time, they tell us that, but this is like not used much in the industry, but we have new softwares now. So another issue that comes up with the use is, why are we still learning outdated softwares then? Like, why are you wasting our time with this software instead of teaching us the new ones, right now? Because for like examples I would like to say is, during my education time, especially coming from engineering background, softwares were key to a lot of our subjects, especially during the third and fourth year, because like we did a project, so we had to do analysis on the different substances we were using to put our model together: stainless steel, bronze, whatever you were using, testing tensile strength, composite strength. So a lot of softwares over time have developed into this, and there is a vast variety of like choices in the market to pick from for your project. And a lot of institutions prefer to stick back to a little of the predated. To be fair, these softwares were the building blocks for what we deal with today. But again, we kind of need to be with the times. We can't study the older stuff and get to the next level. And very few institutions, from my personal experience, very few institutions give students the chance to be with the new softwares, to deal with the new ones in the academic sense. Obviously, if you want, they always tell you these are the softwares, go, you can learn it from outside. You have, like Mr. Vikas said, specialized institutions which teach some software specifically, which is actually a really good thing. Because one thing I'll tell you for sure is, an important part is the drive from the student and how they want to go ahead with in their job life, in their background. How you want to go up is through learning the better software. And yes, Mr. Ramesh had a really great point when he said that specific specialization is kind of old school now. I completely agree with him, because there is so much to learn now, so much requirement, that one specialization, as hard as it may be to get, is not enough now. He is 100% right on that from a youth perspective, because the competition is so immense for youth now, and there are so many things, you know I mean, there was a time when knowing like two softwares and it was enough, and you could be part of the industry. But now it's very different. Now there are new softwares coming out every other month which you never even heard of. And it maybe just might have like 4 or 5 more features compared to the previous one, but it is still the preferred one because it's the newer one. And like one good thing a lot of institutions do now is you get dual degrees is given in a lot of institutions, which I believe is a really good step ahead. Because in case you want to, even if you are in a specific engineering course, you can still specialize in etc. stuff. Like me coming from mechanical engineering, we had the choice to pick out some outside mechanical engineering subjects, like robotics was given up to a choice. Because like I said, today's world, the competition is very intense for students, and the only way to stay ahead is to know everything. It is hard, but it's the only way to be part of everything. Because like the world in general, like not even just taking India, it's like almost every other person has a degree now. you know like what makes you stand out is your own set of skills, what you as an individual have taught out yourself as a youth. So one thing I definitely tell people is, I feel like I myself might not have done it enough as much as I tried. But even during your education time, you cannot completely rely on the academic education, because there are some parts of it which are outdated, and education system does take time to catch on. But like, I have put myself in the industry situation, I have worked in parts, and where they themselves have told me what you learned so far is going to be just a building block. Like literally your 2 years of study is going to take 10 minutes, and after that you have to completely weld yourself in new systems. So one thing I from a youth, from a student perspective, I highly recommend to anyone is, if you really want to grow and be able to keep up with the industry, you need your own set of skills. Like it is, and especially today with the internet and the way the world is open, it is quite easier compared to last times to how to set your skills together. You have YouTube tutorials, you have online classes, you can try the softwares. A lot of software companies give students special discounts on, here, try our software, you want to learn it, we'll teach you, which I think the youth really needs to take advantage of. I have seen some people I know myself who have taken advantage of it, and they have really done a good job with it. Like some personal friends of mine, they had landed jobs with big MNCs before their final year even began.
Yeah, so I'll
Because
just, sorry to cut you, because
No,
the
no, no
questions have
problem.
started coming in, so I want to make a justice to
Yes,
all of
yes,
them.
please, please, please.
But one of the very important thing, just for your information, Afnan, you are based out of Dubai. But yeah, I do understand that there is definitely a gap in what students go through and when they come into the industry. But it slowly and steadily is bridging, because Vikasji mentioned about the kind of center of excellences that are getting created.
Yeah. Like I said, I agree with Mr. Vikas. He was
Yeah,
absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I myself come from a company, PTC. We are a technology providers like CAD, CAM, IoT, augmented reality. So what we are also doing is we are trying to work with an education institute and build it as a part of the syllabus, so that the final engineering projects are all done in these new technologies. Like, for example, we have done something with BITS Pilani. We are doing something with VIT Vellore, So those kind of institutions, there are quite a few institutes where we are working. So definitely the current generation people are slightly luckier than us, because, now they have these kind of technologies, part of their syllabus, part of their projects. In fact, many of these institutions, of course, not all of them, mostly private institutes, they are setting up this kind of a transformation labs, which with the collaboration with industry in college campuses, which
Yes,
of course
that's
students
correct.
can go and
Yes, that's
avail
correct.
that and be ready.
Even my college had those. I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
But like I said, the student drive also has to
yes,
be
exactly,
there.
absolutely.
You can provide them everything, but if they are not interested in doing it, then it's not.
Of course. I think the whole idea of this discussion is to give a direction to the students, and from where and how they can do it. So I think let me start taking the questions here. I would like to take the first question. This is Mr. Ramesh. Mr. Ramesh, someone is asking, saying that what skills should youth expand on to be a globally relevant in manufacturing? So
Sure.
basically, what kind of
Yeah.
skills needs to be done from
For
the
one, I would say, I'd step back a little and say, regardless of what skills you choose to pursue, I think you need to have a solid foundation. And I think from a manufacturing context, you're thinking of foundation in mathematics, in design, in technology. And so I would, I would say, get your foundation right, and focus on trying to get, during the course of your academic world, trying to get a real world exposure to industry as well. So I don't know about how things work in India anymore, but over here we have the concept of internships and co-ops and stuff, and those really help young students get a real world understanding of what's expected in a manufacturing environment. So that really helps. And in terms of skills, so besides getting a solid footing on subjects relevant to the industry, focus on building soft skills as well. So the world of tomorrow is going to be a world of teams. So not one person has the answer to everything. So those days of siloed thinking are over. So focus on building those collaborative skills, the ability to connect and work in teams, and also focus on developing transferable skills so you are well positioned to pivot as needed. So just because you've entered in a certain segment of industry doesn't mean you have to continue. In fact, you'd be best served if you develop that wider set of skills and deeper as well, and kind of position yourself so that you can pivot as needed. So yeah, so those are kind of, in terms of specific skills, like we've already talked about a whole range of skills that would be valued, especially those skills at the convergence of the digital and physical worlds. But I would say think of the wider picture as such.
Yeah, sure. So I think a very important message to the youth, what you have given is, yes, of course, you can specialize as you go deeper into it, but before that, you get your foundation right in terms of, the mathematics and science and basic engineering. And on the top of it, you can always build the skill sets, and especially those physical digital convergence, the technologies that are, coming at the core of Industry 4.0. Yeah. Thank you. Makes sense. Yeah. There's another question here. It says that as we know, India is going to be digital. Yes, for sure. And it will help a lot in manufacturing. Will it help workers in labor sector? Maybe I can take this. So I think, or maybe you can add to that. So definitely, yes, as Industry 4.0 is coming in, Indian industry is also not far behind. Of course, may not be, we are in the forefront of adoption of Industry 4.0 globally, but there are quite a few, especially in the MSME, they are adopting to this, and factories are going smart and factories are going digital. But from labor's perspective, when the factories become smart, the manufacturing becomes smart, and the laborers or the operators who are actually doing an assembly on the shop floor or the production, they will also become smart. Now they will also embrace the new technologies, like for example, additive manufacturing, the 3D printing, or probably augmented reality. Because I've seen some of the companies, the operators standing on the shop floor wearing the Microsoft HoloLens and looking the entire augmented reality right in front of them on this thing without referring to the the documents and 2D drawings and all those manual hard copies, and looking at that and getting all the information and trying assembly. Yes, it is very niche as of now. Maybe on a conceptual level, on a pilot level, things are going on. But the answer to this is yes, it will also help laborers. Laborers will also upskill or upgrade their skill sets in this, and the laborers who upgrade their skills to adopt to these new technologies will be in more demand rather than the unskilled people who will not be willing to upgrade their skills. Okay. Next question is why don't we have many startups in manufacturing? Also, how much does government support them? Maybe Vikas ji, you want to take this?
Government supports the startups in manufacturing. In fact, whatever, if somebody wants to put up and capital investments in that, government is willing to subsidize investments. There are schemes by Department of Industry. And only what concept, what manufacturing that they need to give. But I know many companies whose capital investments have been funded by government. Also, and the Make in India concept, as Devendra, you pointed out,
Yeah, sure, sir.
India
Sorry to
startups get preference on price and purchases.
Sir, sorry to cut you in between. Couldn't hear you very properly, but that's fine. Maybe before I conclude, just a quick view from Binu. Binu himself, you're an entrepreneur, and you after you started your own entrepreneurship, and whatever the conversation we had so far. So, what do you think about the this government supporting manufacturing or entrepreneurs or the industry supporting providing the opportunities to the youth? A quick view from you, and then we can get into.
Yeah, there are a lot of government schemes being introduced, to NABARD, where you can get your subsidies. So there's a lot of subsidies coming. There are schemes where a small entrepreneur credit cells have been created, where you get credits based on your degrees, based on your background, not only on your collateral and things like this. So people can avail this opportunity, or they can get into the bankers and apply for this type of keeping their degrees. Degree is good enough for them to get their the funding from the government. So there are a lot of new initiatives that's being taken up by the government, where it supports the startups a lot. So people should. It's necessary for you to venture out and try to understand what are the facilities that's been given by government, and how to utilize it and what fits in best for you, and what
Sure.
to make your dream come true. And there's a lot of opportunities. The market is demanding for a lot of new things, new startups, new technologies being adapted. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of things that available for the young startup people to get into the business line.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, you. Thanks, Binu. And I think we are almost on the top of the hour. So I would just very quickly summarize and hand it over back to Deepika. So, so first thing we spoke about the future of manufacturing. I think everybody spoke about the future is very bright because, because of the situation that we have today. India is emerging as an alternative to China. Of course, initially in the early 95s or early 2000s, we a little bit missed manufacturing because China went into manufacturing, India went into services, IT services. That's where, India is very strong on the IT side. But yes, the time has come back to focus back on manufacturing and the opportunity of Industry 4.0, our advantage of the youth, our demographic advantages, and some of the the Industry 4.0 or FDI coming into India will open up a new opportunity. So there is a good future of manufacturing. From opportunity perspective, I think all of you must have heard about the latest technologies that will help us to adapt to this Industry 4.0 to improve our manufacturing and improve our quality to be globally competitive. The likes of industrial IoT, the augmented realities, the artificial intelligence, the cloud computing, the blockchain, all of these are yes, but at the same time, as Ramesh said, please focus on your foundational learning, whether it's in engineering, whether it is vocational courses or whatever it is. Learn on your foundation, and on the top of that, embrace these new technologies and avail or probably leverage these center of excellences that what institution is building, and so that you have a foundation, you have some deeper expertise, and then you actually gain trained or get an experience in these as a part of the skill development initiatives and center of excellences, so that you're almost there for the industry. So that's the kind of opportunity I can talk about. Technologies, anyway, we already discussed all the latest disruptive technologies. And one last point about entrepreneurship or the job. Definitely, Mr. Ramesh also encouraged that. There are opportunities, as Binu also in the end gave some inputs about the various government schemes that are available. Vikasji spoke about the kind of institutions, the work institutions are doing with governments under skill development. I think there is a lot of opportunities exist there to really leverage all of these. And of course, if you become an entrepreneur, you provide employment to the others, nothing like it. It would be really great. If not, you can always gain experience in the industry and understand what is happening, and then you can take your own entrepreneurship course also. So that is how. So I would like to summarize saying that the future of Indian manufacturing is good, and we have a lot of advantages. Situation is also probably helping us, provided we really make use of this opportunity and align to these opportunities. I'm sure in coming years we will be number one destination globally from manufacturing perspective. So thank you all of you for all of your views. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I will just hand it over back to Deepika just to conclude.